The drama she would never know is about a workplace romance between Song-ah, a professional marketer, and her handsome junior colleague, Hyun-sung, who secretly has a crush on her. The movie starts with a scene of the two main characters negotiating and presenting a product. Because they worked so well together, the negotiation went smoothly. Song-ah patted Hyun-sung on the shoulder to show her praise, which made his heart race. He shyly asked Song-ah if she just saw him as a kid, even though they were only a year apart. When Song-ah answered, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She didn't exactly see him as a kid. They were late for the bus going back to the office, and right away Hyun-sung acted like a grown-up and ran to catch it for her. Back at the office, they were given wedding invitations by a coworker. That coworker had also had a secret office romance for 3 years and promised to share their tips. Hearing that, Hyun-sung thought he should definitely ask for some advice, just in case he and his senior colleague ended up together someday. In the afternoon, they went out to investigate product sales. This was Hyun-sung's chance, and he asked Song-ah what she thought about office romances. Song-ah said that if you like someone, it doesn't matter if it's an office romance or not. Hearing Song-ah's confirmation, Hyun-sung was on cloud 9 and couldn't stop smiling the whole afternoon. Hyun-sung took advantage of the market research trip to call Song-ah his girlfriend and even bought her a lipstick. Song-ah scolded him, telling him not to act like that because it would cause unnecessary misunderstandings. Hyun-sung looked really sad listening to her lecture. Seeing his remorse, she didn't say anything more, just told him to take the lipstick to the company and get reimbursed. But he refused and said it was a gift. Seeing his sincerity, Song-ah accepted the lipstick, considering it payment for mentoring him all these years. As night fell, Hyun-sung slowly thought back to the first day he met Song-ah. It turned out that from the moment he saw her, Hyun-sung had feelings for this woman who was so dedicated to her job. The next day, Hyun-sung gathered his courage and invited Song-ah to celebrate his birthday with him, and she agreed. To avoid being found out, Hyun-sung even paid for all their colleagues to come to the birthday celebration. During the party, he was always secretly watching and paying attention to her feelings. Song-ah received a text and quickly rushed outside. Seeing this, Hyun-sung quickly followed, only to see Song-ah holding hands with their team leader. Hyun-sung quickly hid. That night, Hyun-sung couldn't sleep, thinking about the relationship between the two of them. It turned out that the flower already had an owner, and that owner was his boss. They had been secretly dating for a long time, without anyone finding out. He went to see his sister, feeling dejected, and they drank to ease his sorrow. He finally liked someone, but that person always saw him as a kid and didn't pay attention to him. Who could understand Hyun-sung's pain? Over the weekend, Song-ah and her best friend met up to work out at home. Song-ah revealed that she'd been dating her team leader for 2 years and was also planning to get married. The team leader, hanging out with his own friend, also said that it was time for him to get married. After realizing that his crush had a boyfriend, Hyun-sung was thinking about giving up, but then he saw her boyfriend holding hands with a woman going into his family's bridal shop. From his sister, Hyun-sung learned that those two were about to get married. Seeing them, Hyun-sung felt a surge of hope, but he didn't know how to talk to Song-ah about it. The next day at work, Song-ah noticed that Hyun-sung was acting differently towards the team leader, and she couldn't help but ask him why. To Song-ah's questioning, Hyun-sung said he was doing it to protect her, and then he left Song-ah with a confused look on her face. A month passed peacefully, but finally, when Hyun-sung overheard the team leader using work as an excuse to ditch Song-ah, he got so angry he couldn't hold back anymore. He immediately made plans with her to show her the true colors of that jerk. Song-ah didn't really believe Hyun-sung, but out of curiosity, she still went to the meeting place. Watching the traffic, Song-ah couldn't help but feel a sense of fear. She anxiously waited for the outcome. A second later, she saw with her own eyes the man she loved all this time about to marry another woman. Song-ah couldn't hold back her tears. Song-ah still stubbornly insisted it was just a misunderstanding. Turning around, Song-ah saw the bride putting on the wedding dress that she had dreamed about for so long, ready to marry the man she loved. All the hope in her heart collapsed. Her pride kicking in, Song-ah warned Hyun-sung not to let anyone interfere. Song-ah locked herself in her room to wallow in her sadness. No matter how many times the jerk called, she refused to answer. Looking at the engagement rings she was planning to give him for their 2-year anniversary, Song-ah thought her love was ridiculous. The next day at work, she looked terrible. The jerk tried to ask her how she was, but she avoided him, refusing any contact. She kept her distance, which made him ask if Song-ah was mad at him. That evening, they met up to talk. Song-ah asked if he had done something wrong to her. He casually replied that all men make their girlfriends mad sometimes. Song-ah firmly said that if he wanted to maintain the relationship, he had to go public with it. He hesitated for a while, then asked her to give him time to think. At the bus stop, her mother called, full of sympathy, and finally Song-ah's emotions exploded. She questioned what she had done wrong to be treated like this. Thinking about what Hyun-sung had said before, she quickly went to find him and said she wanted to get revenge on the jerk. Hyun-sung's reply was to ask her to date him. Song-ah thought Hyun-sung was just taking advantage of the situation, so she immediately refused and left. Looking at the sea and reminiscing about happy memories, Song-ah's eyes welled up with tears. Hyun-sung quickly ran to comfort her, but Song-ah criticized him for interfering in her business and asked why he thought he had the right to speak. As they left amidst the conflict, Song-ah suddenly received a text from the jerk, saying she had forgotten about her work. The next day, a colleague asked her if she had finished the task, and Song-ah panicked, but thankfully Hyun-sung had completed it for her. To thank him, Song-ah invited Hyun-sung to dinner. They had a meal together and resolved their previous conflict. After talking with Hyun-sung, Song-ah called and broke up with the jerk. The jerk saw Hyun-sung taking Song-ah home, and he questioned why she had broken up with him and who the man with her was. He grabbed her wrist tightly, but Hyun-sung quickly came back to protect his crush. The jerk threatened that if he didn't let go of Song-ah, he'd stay home tomorrow instead of coming to work. The two men refused to back down, but at this moment, Song-ah slowly took Hyun-sung's hand. Hyun-sung, as if getting a shot of adrenaline, excitedly declared that Song-ah was his woman. To get revenge on the jerk, she told him that she liked Hyun-sung so much that she didn't feel any guilt about him anymore. At work, the jerk used his position as a superior to start trouble, criticizing Hyun-sung in front of their colleagues. Then, he asked Song-ah to meet him, but unexpectedly, she agreed to meet Hyun-sung instead. It was a perfect slap in the face for the jerk, making him angrily walk away. While doing market research at a store, Song-ah accidentally met the jerk's bride-to-be, who was a customer. Meanwhile, Hyun-sung also happened to meet the jerk, who was casually making coffee. The jerk warned Hyun-sung to quickly leave Song-ah's life because he wouldn't give her up so easily. The next day, he used work as an excuse to separate Song-ah from Hyun-sung and went to find her alone. He said he would marry her if she agreed to come back to him. Song-ah turned the tables and said she would attend his wedding in a month, leaving the jerk speechless. He still tried to explain, and Song-ah slapped him so hard it knocked his senses out. Right then, Hyun-sung felt something was wrong and immediately drove to pick up Song-ah, finding the scene of the jerk trying to hold on to her. A scuffle broke out, and Song-ah immediately pulled Hyun-sung away, leaving the jerk alone. Sitting in Hyun-sung's car, Song-ah burst into tears, feeling stupid for loving someone like him. After failing to win her back, the jerk casually went to take wedding photos, while Song-ah was alone in her room contemplating life. Her best friend accidentally found the rings in the trash and realized her best friend had just been cheated on. The friend decided to drag Song-ah to a bar to drink away her sorrows. Spotting his crush at the bar, Hyun-sung followed, just in time to see a strange man approach Song-ah. Hyun-sung immediately stepped in, standing behind Song-ah like a shield, making the man awkwardly leave. As the music ended and fireworks went off, Song-ah turned around and saw Hyun-sung had been there the whole time. Song-ah's heart fluttered at Hyun-sung's tenderness. Song-ah left to avoid falling even more for him. The three of them went to eat, and finally, Song-ah had a genuine smile after a long period of sadness. However, seeing her ex-boyfriend every day at the office made the atmosphere awkward and uncomfortable. On top of that, he used work as a personal matter and asked her to lunch, which Song-ah couldn't refuse. Struggling with their feelings, they also had conflicts at work. The jerk tried to use a European expansion as a reason to move Song-ah away from Hyun-sung, making her very angry. He even transferred Hyun-sung to another team, despite him being Song-ah's subordinate. Every time the jerk saw Song-ah, he would try to win her back, but this time, his fiancée caught him in the act. Separated from Song-ah, Hyun-sung's work was back to square one. He had to go out to dinner with his team until late at night, and got so drunk he didn't see Song-ah's messages. Song-ah anxiously went looking for him and found Hyun-sung struggling to adjust to his new life. Seeing Song-ah, Hyun-sung immediately reverted to his old self, resting his head on her shoulder like a child. Song-ah, feeling helpless, took Hyun-sung home. In the taxi, Hyun-sung kept nodding off like a bobblehead and then did all sorts of silly things which drove Song-ah crazy. Stay calm, stay calm. You have to stay calm. kept running through Song-a's head, where she wouldn't be able to stop herself from throwing Hyun-sung out in the middle of the road. With great difficulty, Song-a managed to drag the big guy into his house and dumped him onto the couch for good measure. Song-a was about to leave, but Hyun-sung acted cute and silly, holding her back. He pushed her down on the chair and did all kinds of things to keep her there. Hyun-sung made her drink a whole glass of juice, then fed her yogurt while flirting with her. Song-a, helpless, watched Hyun-sung acting up, vowing to settle the score with him tomorrow. The next morning, Hyun-sung woke up with a headache. Looking at the kitchen, Hyun-sung remembered all the things he did yesterday. Oh man, his head hurt even more now, and he banged his head on the wall a few times out of embarrassment. To punish Hyun-sung, Song-a decided to cut ties with him. She wrote a note cutting him off, making him cry his eyes out. He proactively sought out Song-a and admitted his mistakes. Seeing his sincerity, Song-a forgave him this time, but didn't allow him to do it again. Meanwhile, the jerk was taking his fiancée to try on wedding dresses again. Since she saw the jerk trying to hold on to Song-a, images of them together had been popping into her head. To avoid losing her man, she decided to purchase the expensive dress right away so they could get married on time. That evening, Song-a was forced to work overtime by the jerk. Unable to watch his crush work without eating, Hyun-sung bought her dinner right away. Classic boyfriend move, always caring for his crush. After they ate, Hyun-sung asked to leave early, and Song-a had to stay to finish her work. Song-a happily saw Hyun-sung to the elevator, but then bumped into the jerk who was coming back from an errand. Talk about a buzzkill. Seeing Song-a and Hyun-sung happy together, the jerk got jealous. He told Song-a the whole story to try to win her back. It turned out that the boss's younger sister, who was also the jerk's fiancée, had tried to commit suicide because of him. So, unless he was dumped first, he was forced to accept the marriage under any conditions. Hearing this, Song-a felt sympathy for him, but she still couldn't forgive him for making her the other woman. Oh well, it was still his problem, lol. The cosmetics company had an important promotional event, but the model had an accident and couldn't make it. Hyun-sung had to take on the role of temporary model. Song-a took him to get his hair done and changed into his outfit. Seeing Hyun-sung's dazzling handsomeness in the mirror, Song-a felt her own heart flutter for the handsome guy. She personally applied moisturizer to Hyun-sung's face. Seeing her focused on her work, he decided to support her decisions fully, knowing that they might have to be apart for a while. The event went smoothly, but the jerk's fiancée suddenly showed up, foreshadowing an impending storm. The girl walked in and bumped into Song-a. She quickly apologized and left, but then she recognized Song-a as the woman the jerk was trying to win back. The girl immediately called Song-a to stop. She looked at Song-a with a provocative expression, but Song-a didn't back down either. She politely greeted her and quickly left. Just as one wave passed, another one came crashing in. The company's product was defective, and the best way to fix it was to apply labels manually. Hyun-sung, not wanting Song-a to be tired, volunteered to join the team. Hyun-sung sat there applying labels until late at night and still hadn't finished. Seeing him doing that for her, she decided to stay in the country to work so she wouldn't leave Hyun-sung alone. Hearing that his crush was staying because of him, Hyun-sung jumped up for joy. Song-a happened to see him yelling and celebrating on her way to rescue him. Song-a watched him with joy and couldn't help but laugh along with him. Song-a diligently sat and applied labels with Hyun-sung, but because she was so tired, she fell asleep. Hyun-sung quickly supported Song-a's head and put it on his shoulder, then gently stroked her hair. But with their bad luck, Hyun-sung's hair stroking woke Song-a up. Seeing her still sleepy, Hyun-sung convinced her to go to sleep and then quickly ran out to the car in the rain to get her a blanket. While wiping the water off his face, Song-a asked him why he liked her. Hyun-sung replied that from the first time he met her, he had noticed her, and that day by day, he wanted to see her more and more. And then before he knew it, he was in love. Song-a told him she wasn't as great as he imagined. She also had her useless moments and wasn't as perfect as Hyun-sung made her out to be. Song-a felt that Hyun-sung's feelings for her were too big, and that was her final answer to him. Seeing that his crush had rejected him, there was no way Hyun-sung was going to give up that easily. He boldly declared that he would wait until she agreed to accept his feelings. He would always be there for her and wait for Song-a to return his love. After a night of non-stop work, the two of them finished their assignment on time and went home. They turned on the radio for some chill vibes, but they were met with a song about a heartbroken guy. Song-a quickly turned it off to avoid rubbing salt in Hyun-sung's fresh wounds from yesterday's rejection. News about the jerk's wedding broke out. Song-ah looked at the news and felt regretful that she had given so much of her feelings only to find out the man she loved was marrying someone else. Meanwhile, Hyun-sung wasn't doing much better. He was chosen to participate in designing a new product. Hyun-sung had a headache and couldn't think of any ideas for this design. He had to win so that he could be on the same level as Song-ah, who had won many competitions in a row. Over the weekend, Song-ah was dragged out for a walk by her best friend, and they happened to run into Hyun-sung doing market research. Her best friend excitedly ran up to Hyun-sung to say hi. Seeing her friend about to make a scene, Song-ah quickly told Hyun-sung to go back to work. But there was no way her best friend would let Hyun-sung escape. She immediately dragged the two of them to a drinking session. Food couldn't stop her friend from talking. She casually revealed that Song-ah had been looking sad ever since Hyun-sung transferred. Hearing that, Song-ah choked on her food, while Hyun-sung just kept smiling to himself. Wanting Song-ah to find a boyfriend quickly, her best friend faked a stomach ache and bailed, leaving her with Hyun-sung, and she even told Song-ah to take good care of him. As they were leaving, they suddenly ran into co-workers who were also out for a walk. Song-ah grabbed Hyun-sung's hand and ran, not wanting to be misunderstood. Song-ah's flip-flop fell off, and she had to stop to pick it up, and then Hyun-sung joked that she was too lazy to exercise. As Hyun-sung stepped into the elevator, he ran into the jerk's fiancée. He quietly observed the girl in front of him, and then suddenly the elevator dinged, signaling it had arrived. The elevator doors opened, revealing Song-ah waiting for the elevator with the jerk. 4 pairs of eyes met, and Hyun-sung quickly stepped forward and grabbed Song-ah's hand, avoiding this awkward encounter. As they left the company, Hyun-sung suddenly felt a chill down his spine. It turned out that team leader On, who was a bit of a gossip, had seen the two of them holding hands. Hyun-sung did his best to flatter team leader On so she would keep a secret. Seeing Hyun-sung acting like he was clinging to team leader On, Song-ah was curious and asked what was going on. Hyun-sung vehemently denied it, saying he just owed her a favor, then politely told Song-ah to go home. But the gossipy nature of team leader On could not be changed. In no time, the whole team knew about Song-ah and Hyun-sung. While the team was excitedly gossiping, the two main characters were still oblivious and went out for a meal. He took her to his favorite restaurant, and they had a really great time together. Hyun-sung had too much to drink again, leaving Song-ah helpless. She took him outside for some fresh air to sober up, but then he just used her shoulder as a pillow for the rest of the evening. Their relationship was progressing well, but suddenly Hyun-sung's ex-girlfriend appeared at the company and asked him to talk. She said she missed Hyun-sung a lot and wanted to get back together, but he immediately refused because he had Song-ah now. Hyun-sung had been thinking a lot about his relationship with Song-ah. He really liked her, but when he thought about the distance she talked about, he felt like he was just a burden to her. Hyun-sung decided to truly leave Song-ah's side. He poured out his heart to Song-ah, saying that from now on, he would exist independently, so he wouldn't be a burden to her anymore. The two of them started keeping their distance from each other, but it seemed that it was quite difficult for both of them. They had gotten used to each other's presence at work and in their lives. Song-ah felt that she hated the distance between them. She told Hyun-sung that she hated having to keep their distance and that she didn't want him to leave her. After Song-ah's high-level attempt to hold him back, Hyun-sung was speechless from the surprise. Just as the atmosphere was getting tense, Song-ah received a call from a co-worker to prepare for a meeting. Hyun-sung didn't have a chance to respond to her pleas before Song-ah had to leave. Back at home, Hyun-sung remembered what Song-ah had said and just kept smiling to himself. Finally, he decided he would stand still and wait for Song-ah to clarify her feelings in her heart. Meanwhile, Song-ah was having a beer with her best friend to ease her worries. She was anxious that Hyun-sung wouldn't agree with what she said. The next day, even though they were still a little awkward when they met, they were no longer strangers like before. She had initiated a conversation with him, and he had responded to her. Even though he had made that decision, Hyun-sung was still unsure about it. He was babysitting, but his mind was wandering up in the clouds to the point where his niece thought he had been dumped. Hyun-sung tried to explain that he hadn't been dumped, but was even getting ready to have a girlfriend. But the look on his face still made his niece lose all faith. The next morning, Hyun-sung had a presentation for the new product design competition. He was nervous before his turn, but Song-ah was calm and said that Hyun-sung was sure to win. Not letting Song-ah's hopes down, Hyun-sung did a great job in his presentation, and of course, he won first place. Song-ah and Hyun-sung went out to celebrate with their younger colleagues. Everyone was casually trying to set her up with someone. Hyun-sung, sitting next to her, felt a headache coming on, but thankfully, Song-ah refused right away, preventing all the effort he had put into winning her over from going to waste. The two of them went home together. Hyun-sung playfully asked Song-ah to pat his head as a reward. She patted his head, making him laugh happily. Due to overworking, our boy Hyun-sung got a fever, but luckily Song-ah noticed it in time. She quickly went to buy medicine, but when she rang his doorbell, there was no answer. She decided to enter his passcode herself. Song-ah walked in and saw Hyun-sung curled up on the bed, with his forehead burning hot. Song-ah spent the entire night taking care of him. Hyun-sung woke up and saw Song-ah caring for him so devotedly that his heart filled with a ton of sweetness, and he nearly fainted. He said that he would wait and show her how beautiful love can be. Just when their love was starting to blossom, Song-ah received news that her mother had cancer. Even though their mother-daughter relationship was a bit strained, she still loved her mother very much. She anxiously called the doctor to ask everything about her mother's condition. However, her mother refused to have surgery and stubbornly didn't want her to have a boyfriend. Influenced by her late husband, Song-ah's mother didn't want her to follow in her footsteps. The two of them had just reconciled when another conflict broke out, and Song-ah angrily stormed out to clear her head. She wandered around and then found herself in front of Hyun-sung's house without realizing it. Song-ah really wanted to see him right now. Through some telepathic connection, Hyun-sung suddenly appeared. He gently hugged her and comforted her. She cried like a child in Hyun-sung's arms. Finally, she realized her feelings for Hyun-sung. Song-ah said that she liked him. Hyun-sung laughed and hugged her tighter. He took her home and then pointed to his shoulder and patted it a few times, implying that whenever she needed him, his shoulder would be her strong support. So sweet. OMG. The next morning, Song-ah took a day off from work. Since she was a workaholic, her co-workers were concerned and asked about it. Hyun-sung, hearing that, nearly blurted out the truth, but thankfully stopped himself in time. He had a close call, so he just laughed it off. Hyun-sung went for coffee with his colleagues, but his eyes were glued to his phone. As soon as he saw a text from Song-ah, he abandoned his colleagues and called her to flirt. It's true that he was putting his girlfriend before his friends. It was the same during work hours. Hyun-sung spent the whole time looking at the time. As soon as the clock struck 6, he stood up, said goodbye to his colleagues, and left. It turned out he was leaving early to go on a date with his girl. He personally selected a gift basket and then went to the hospital to visit her mother. Just when they were getting cozy, her mother suddenly appeared. Song-ah had to make up the excuse that Hyun-sung was a junior colleague and was sent by the company to visit her. They were incredibly lucky to not get caught. Hyun-sung was getting ready to go home when he received a call from another team leader. He called Hyun-sung out for drinks and talked badly about his colleagues. Hyun-sung felt uncomfortable listening to it, so he asked to leave early, but he was told it was disrespectful even though that guy wasn't even sure he would be Hyun-sung's boss in the future. Seeing the flattering attitude of the employee beside him, Hyun-sung felt disgusted, immediately paid for the drinks, and politely asked to leave. Sitting in a meeting, Hyun-sung couldn't stop checking his messages from Song-ah. When his colleagues all looked at him, he quickly tried to explain, but there was no way he could fool them. His colleagues knew full well that Hyun-sung and Song-ah had an unusual relationship, they just hadn't said anything. Realizing he was about to get caught, Hyun-sung used work as an excuse and bolted. Song-ah's mother's surgery was a great success, so Hyun-sung decided to take her to relax and clear her head. They went camping, made a campfire, and walked along the beach together. Looking at the night sky, Song-ah took his hand and told him the story about her mother. Influenced by her mother, Song-ah didn't fall in love easily and didn't completely devote herself to love. But now she had Hyun-sung, and he promised to devote himself to love in her place. The two of them shared their first kiss under the breath of the ocean. Hyun-sung was going to sleep in his tent, and she would sleep in hers, but seeing how pitiful he looked, Song-ah gave him permission to sleep in her tent with her. It was a little tense lying next to each other for the first time. Hyun-sung kept asking Song-ah if she was cold. Song-ah suggested they change how they addressed each other and stop using honorifics when they talked. Hyun-sung, of course, agreed, and they looked at each other as they drifted off to sleep. Meanwhile, the jerk and his fiancée were having problems. Due to the jerk's father suddenly passing away, their wedding day had to be postponed. He didn't allow his fiancée to mourn with him or touch his father's belongings. She was upset, went out to drink to soothe her sorrows, and then called the jerk to come pick her up, but he didn't answer. She stood on the street and yelled in anger. Song-ah and Hyun-sung had a fun camping trip. The two of them went home together. Standing at her doorstep, Hyun-sung acted silly, not wanting Song-ah to go inside. It's true that nobody is normal when they're in love. The two of them started their secret office dating life. They only dared to secretly hold hands in the elevator and text each other on their phones. With great difficulty, they managed to meet at a tea room, but before they could say anything, two huge dark figures appeared. The meeting was immediately relocated to a conference room. They planned to go on a chill date after work, but suddenly, Hyun-sung overheard information that his product idea had been stolen by another team and was about to be released. Hyun-sung immediately confronted them, but he received a nonchalant answer that since their company was a multi-brand company, whoever released the product first would still bring in profit. Hyun-sung flew into a rage and immediately reported the incident to his superiors. But his superiors only cared about the company's profits, so Hyun-sung had to reluctantly accept that both brands would release their products at the same time. Seeing Hyun-sung upset, his colleagues couldn't stand it and got together to drink and talk badly about the idea thief to vent their anger. Seeing her boyfriend so upset, there was no way Song-ah would sit still. She jokingly told Hyun-sung she would go scratch the thief's car for him to vent his anger, but all he wanted now was for her to hug him. Song-ah suggested a different plan to Hyun-sung, and he immediately agreed. He kissed her on the lips as a thank you. Classic time for a move. The next morning, Hyun-sung shared his ideas with his team leader. His plan was immediately approved and put into action. The idea thief, hearing that, immediately protested. Hyun-sung couldn't hold back his anger this time. He used a taste of his own medicine against the guy, leaving him speechless before running to complain to their boss. Luckily, the boss thought Hyun-sung's plan was promising, so he immediately gave him the authority and threatened that if the other guy didn't meet his KPIs, he would be out. At the end of the day, Hyun-sung left work early, leaving Song-ah alone. She was struggling with the door when suddenly Hyun-sung appeared like a god. It turned out that he had just been using a distraction tactic on their colleagues. But the two of them couldn't seem to have a date at the company. As they were joking around, their team leader suddenly appeared out of nowhere watching the show. Their hearts raced, but thankfully the team leader knew how to pretend. After having a conflict with his fiancée, the jerk broke up with her, and he disappeared without a word. The fiancée, after hearing the news, immediately stormed into the company to confront Song-ah. Song-ah had a face like, I don't know anything, but still politely replied that she didn't know anything. She was even about to lay her hands on Song-ah, but Hyun-sung stepped in to stop her. Seeing his sister suddenly come to find Song-ah and cause trouble but not answer any questions, their superior called Song-ah in for a talk. Song-ah truthfully shared her whole past with the jerk. He was sympathetic and said that if she had any news, she should tell him. After that incident, the whole company started gossiping that Song-ah was the other woman who was trying to steal a man from the chairman's niece. Faced with the storm of public opinion, luckily her colleagues helped her dispel the rumors about her. To soothe Song-ah's feelings, Hyun-sung secretly placed a chocolate bar on her desk. When his colleagues found out, he gave a hopeless explanation. Seeing Hyun-sung trying to hide his actions like that, his colleagues couldn't bear it. They revealed they already knew about their relationship and told them to feel free to express their feelings. Not only did they have to deal with the relationship rumors, but now the products of the brand Song-ah was working on were all being returned. It turned out that a beauty blogger had given them a bad review, and viewers had all returned the products, leading to a serious crisis. Song-ah and Hyun-sung decided to stay up all night watching the video to find the cause. Just when they were about to give up, Song-ah noticed an issue in the video. Song-ah immediately printed the evidence and gave it to her colleagues to plan their response. They met with the beauty blogger to resolve the issue peacefully. Song-ah asked the girl to remove the videos from social media and to make a video correcting the rumors. However, she hadn't learned her lesson and declared that she wouldn't remove any of the videos. Seeing that she wouldn't compromise, the two of them immediately released their evidence, proving that the brand was being slandered. Despite the clear evidence, she still argued pointlessly until the two of them decided to resolve the issue through legal means. Then she finally surrendered. After the jerk disappeared, Hyun-sung took on the responsibility of mentoring a new intern. At first, the intern acted indifferent because he had already decided to transfer to another company. But who knew what would happen? After listening to Hyun-sung talk for a while, the intern was fired up and eager to work. The next day, Hyun-sung had to take on the noble task of picking up his niece, who had previously laughed in his face for thinking he had been dumped. Hyun-sung decided to turn the tables by asking Song-ah to go with him. The three of them went shopping like a small family. Back at home, Hyun-sung personally went into the kitchen to cook for the women in his life. After dropping off his niece, Hyun-sung happily took Song-ah home. As the two of them were laughing, the long-missing jerk suddenly appeared. Hyun-sung avoided the situation so they could have some time to talk frankly with each other. He came to apologize and ask her to forgive him. Song-ah had now thought things through and forgave him, putting an end to the relationship. After that was over, Song-ah went to find Hyun-sung to comfort his troubled soul. She gave him a kiss to soothe his tender heart. Song-ah's mother suddenly came to the company looking for her, but she had an appointment and couldn't pick her up, so she told her to go home first. Hyun-sung, seeing her getting ready to leave, quickly rushed over to greet her to make a good impression on his future mother-in-law. He offered to take her all the way home. The two of them chatted happily on the way home. From then on, she became more understanding of Song-ah's work pressure. To win over his mother-in-law, he said that he lived alone and was lonely, so he wanted to take her out to eat for fun. The two of them went out for hot pot. As they were happily eating, her mother suddenly asked if Song-ah had a boyfriend at work, making Hyun-sung cough and speechless. After they finished eating, he took her home, which was also when Song-ah was leaving. The two of them met at the door. Hyun-sung secretly sent her hard eyes and made funny faces at her. Her mother praised Hyun-sung for being polite and well-behaved. It was all worth the effort of trying to win over his mother-in-law all day. At work, Song-ah received an offer to work in Europe, but to settle in over there, Song-ah would have to leave Hyun-sung for 5 years. She had thought a lot about this problem. Song-ah wanted to ask Hyun-sung for his opinion, but the words always came to her lips, and then turned back. The jerk Jae-shin finally made an appearance. He had a meeting with his superior, who he also considered a friend, but he was met with a painful blow. Upon seeing his old friend again, Jae-shin was punched in the face by his superior. He questioned why Jae-shin had treated him like that. Why had he betrayed their friendship? The two turned on each other. The friend vowed to block Jae-shin's path at any cost. Song-ah asked Hyun-sung to get something from her bag. He accidentally found her application for entry into Europe. Song-ah quickly wanted to explain, but Hyun-sung stopped her and said they could talk about it after work. He said he would respect any choice she made and would absolutely not break up with her if she decided to work overseas. He quietly waited for her answer. Faced with these choices, Song-ah decided to leave, despite Hyun-sung trying to hold her back. She wanted to fulfill her dreams. Seeing how determined she was, Hyun-sung respected her decision and agreed to let her go to a different world. As soon as Hyun-sung stepped into the company, he saw his sister waiting for him there. Shocking. News broke out. It turned out that his sister's boyfriend was the director of the company he was working for. The three of them sat there looking at each other, not knowing what to say. Soon she would be leaving the country to go to a new world, so Song-ah decided to tell her mother about her upcoming departure. Her mother not only didn't object, but also supported her decision. She was reflecting on her mistakes in the past. Just because she was so influenced by her late husband, she had been so heartless and hurt her daughter. Over the weekend, Song-ah spent a whole day with Hyun-sung before the two of them separated. Seeing her daughter dressed up beautifully, her mother knew full well that she was going on a date, and she asked if it was with Hyun-sung. Song-ah directly admitted it, and her mother didn't harshly forbid her like before, but slowly accepted the truth and forgot about her husband. The two of them had a better relationship. Song-ah happily hugged Hyun-sung and revealed that her mother had accepted their relationship. Hyun-sung happily took her out on a date. The two of them went and made their own rings. Just as they were having fun, Song-ah received an urgent call and had to return to the company immediately. The unexpected work interrupted their date. Song-ah told Hyun-sung to go home and rest. After finishing her work, Song-ah left, but she noticed a familiar car parked on the side of the road. It turned out that Hyun-sung hadn't left and had patiently waited for her to finish work. During this time, Hyun-sung had faced an unprecedented work crisis. He was frantically looking for a solution. He intended to call and ask Song-ah for her opinion, but then he saw how busy she was, so he put it aside. After continuous effort, the crisis was resolved. Song-ah didn't know anything about Hyun-sung's struggle until she heard about it from a colleague. The two of them went out to eat together. Song-ah apologized for being too busy and not having time to care for him as much as before. He said that it was a small matter, that he didn't want to bother her, and that he was willing to do it and wasn't doing it alone. The two of them spent beautiful days together before their separation. The two of them started their long-distance relationship, and Hyun-sung promised to visit her often if he could. Time flew by, and 3 years passed. Now, Hyun-sung had become a team leader, and Song-ah had her own career overseas. Song-ah decided to return home earlier than planned. They met each other across the street, but Hyun-sung walked away. What had happened in the past 3 years that made Hyun-sung avoid Song-ah like that? It turned out that during those 3 years, the two had planned to meet countless times, but due to work demands, they couldn't see each other. Until one time, Song-ah was on her way home from work and saw Hyun-sung had fallen asleep waiting for her for so long. Song-ah couldn't bear to see him sacrifice so much for her. She bit her lip and said goodbye, even though they still loved each other. The two ran into each other at the company, but didn't say a word, just silently looking at their phones. Song-ah was back to her old job, old team, but one thing had changed: her relationship with Hyun-sung. The two of them were assigned to the same team, but there was an invisible wall between them. Neither of them dared to break that wall. From her colleagues, Song-ah learned that Hyun-sung had been very sad since their breakup. The expression he showed on the outside was just a facade to make her see that he was doing very well. Even though it was very painful, the two of them still had to complete their assigned work. Hyun-sung and Song-ah went to do market research together. That evening, Song-ah suggested inviting Hyun-sung out to dinner, but he refused, saying he already had plans. In reality, Hyun-sung didn't have any plans and went back to the company to work overtime. Meanwhile, Song-ah wasn't any freer than he was. She received a call and had to go out for drinks with other departments. On his way home, Hyun-sung noticed Song-ah drunk and dozing off at the bus stop. He slowly went over to her. Song-ah, seeing him, thought she was dreaming. She said she missed him and still liked him very much. Song-ah apologized for hurting his heart. Hyun-sung took Song-ah all the way home. The next morning, Song-ah woke up with a pounding headache. She slowly remembered what had happened last night and was shocked. She felt like she was crazy for breaking down the invisible wall and directly expressing her feelings to Hyun-sung. It was true that when you drink, you say things you regret when you're sober. That night, the company was having a fire safety equipment inspection, but Song-ah had to go out so she didn't hear the announcement. The fire alarm went off. Without thinking much, Song-ah immediately pulled Hyun-sung's hand and ran. The two of them ran all the way downstairs when Song-ah found out that it was just a drill. She turned away shyly, while Hyun-sung laughed at her expression. The two of them had become less distant after that incident. Looking at him sleeping peacefully, Song-ah gently gazed at her love with a chaotic mind. But man proposes and God disposes. Seeing that they still had feelings for each other, the two of them decided to give themselves a chance to go back to how they were before. Song-ah, of course, agreed. The two of them started interacting more with each other. She began her journey to win Hyun-sung back. She secretly gave him sweets and proactively walked next to him like in the beginning. Seeing Hyun-sung working overtime, Song-ah ordered his favorite fried chicken, and they had dinner together. Even though Song-ah was so proactive, Hyun-sung was still a little scared. He told his sister that he had become a coward now, and he was scared that he would be abandoned again. The next morning, the two of them had a meeting with Hyun-sung's sister to discuss the product packaging design. Song-ah and Hyun-sung's sister had some time to talk privately. On her way home, Song-ah thought a lot about their conversation that day. Song-ah apologized and asked him to let her be by his side to make up for the pain she had caused him. This time, Hyun-sung was brave and accepted Song-ah's feelings. The two of them shared a kiss, marking the return of their relationship to how it was before. The two of them cooked together and teased each other. After getting back together, their relationship was even sweeter than before. The two of them didn't hide it anymore and openly expressed their feelings at work. Hyun-sung happily took his future mother-in-law for her regular checkup. Song-ah's mother still didn't know that the two of them had gotten back together. So when she heard Hyun-sung say he had a girlfriend, she regretted it the whole time. Not wanting to tease his mother-in-law anymore, Hyun-sung revealed that his girlfriend was named Song-ah. Back at home, her mother made them both sit down in front of her and asked them to explain everything clearly. The two of them kept putting on a display of affection in front of her, making Song-ah's mom 3 parts helpless and 7 parts done. Finally, her daughter had someone to rely on, and Song-ah's mother was also somewhat relieved. The two of them made a promise to spend 4 seasons together, go on trips together, and live together for the rest of their lives. Finally, they shared a kiss at the end of the movie. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.